And for tags, something else that we could be putting in here, just for, I know for this district, I could put mud. It's not loading for this example. So it's not actually letting me put in a tag at this point. But I'm honestly not sure why that feature is not working right now because it worked 10 minutes ago. But if there's something that you want to put down here, which is like maybe the name of your neighborhood or a shared interest that's really important, you can write it down. I see someone posted something in the chat. Can you edit an existing map was asked. So I'll show you that in a second. You can't edit other people's maps or copy their maps as a starting template for your own, but after you do it, you can definitely come back and make it a little bit simpler. And by the way, these maps are drawn fairly simply, so it shouldn't be a problem even if you totally want to get rid of a map that you made because you have better ideas. You should be able to do it in maybe 5 minutes. So I wouldn't really worry about making a mistake that you might think is going to be permanent or something. Either way, I'm really happy with how this maps look, and so I'm ready to totally submit it. And you just do that by pressing the button below. And it'll tell you, thank you for your submission. It'll give you a link. So if you want to be able to share that or save that, you could just copy that right down, paste it into a Word document or someplace you know you're going to find later. Or the partners that are working with Representable, like Texans Against Gerrymandering, can put that on the public map page so that other people can access it. So now I'm going to press Browse Entries. And it's loading. So right now it's set to Princeton, but I'm going to quickly navigate all the way back to Texas right now. Sorry, it's not being very cooperative. But here it loads Houston. And so something else that you have available besides just the communities that have been created here is you can look at the state legislature blocks, which is something that is important when some people are trying to identify an area that matters to you just by clicking over here. It'll load. And so these are the Texas State House districts, or you can choose to look at the upper state legislature. So in this instance, the Texas State Senate districts. So whether that's important to you and whether you're coming up with your own map or not, that's a matter of choice for yourself. But some people find it interesting to be able to look at what the current maps are, so it kind of guides their thinking a little bit further. So you've seen how you can create a map. So let's go back to something earlier, which was when someone asked, what if I want to make a change to a map that I've already created, or I want to be able to share it with someone? So for that, I'm going to click My Entries. So for this one, this is the one that I just created right now, the Cinco Ranch MUD7. So what I can do is I can click on it. So it's coming up a little bit slowly. But that initial map I drew, once you get it back, it isolates your original census blocks. So as you can see, those are the ones that it pulled out when you were drawing the neighborhood. And now if anybody else has that link, once they get to Houston, once they see it, they can see it for themselves, whether that's a legislature or somebody else, right? So when I mentioned earlier that knowing the exact census blocks is kind of optional, here's what you can see here is that this neighborhood up in the left corner, even though I drew it in, if I didn't have the boundaries around it totally correctly, it decided that that census block, I didn't mean to include it, even though I did. So that's kind of the risk that it carries if you are a little bit too restrictive with your definitions, is you're carrying the risk that the software representable is not going to actually know what you were drawing or not. But here I have my district again. I have data layers, so I can look up and I can actually put the state legislature lines if it pulls up for me right here. So it's a little bit, like for example, this is House District 28. And so you can see how it spans all the way over here. And you can also see that my area of interest is totally within that House district. And so you might be wondering, like, why is this feature there? what if I drew this entire area, Cinco Ranch, into into like a community of interest? Then you would be able to show that right now it's divided into different state house districts. Technically, they have to do that because it's in a separate county. But for other examples, they'd be able to say, this is really important that we have a community that is being divided right now, as you can see here, and let's change that in the next redistricting cycle, right? So I think this has shown most of the software. I think what we're going to do now is we're going to have the opportunity for other people to try their own hand at using the software if everybody has an account, but I'll kind of let Lydia take it from here. But I hope I showed you all like a good first look at this Representable software.
Thank you, Matt. One thing that I think we should do is, I think if someone from Harris County would volunteer their area, if it's slightly different from where Matt lives, or the area that Matt chose, why don't we do that and see how he would handle that area? So let me see who's here. Linda, you
Yeah,
are
I'm in zip code 77084.
Yeah. So
And
Matt, why don't we do that one?
All right, let's try that out. So that was 77084.
yes,
All right. I'll see if it works. Remember, as long as you're in Houston, you can try just a generic zip code and it'll get you close enough. But so does this look like your neighborhood?
well, you know, 77084 covers a very
Yeah, it's
big
a big one.
area. I'm off of Clay Road in Barker, Cypress.
All right. So this is that intersection. The Randalls.
Okay. Yeah, I'm, see where that Westlake RV resort is? I'm right next door.
All right, great. So let's
The-
try
The
identifying the area that's important to you.
Okay.
Where is that landfill that they've been planning to?
It's on the other side of Clay Road. I don't know if it's going to show on the map. When I sit at my light on Clay Road, I can actually kind of sort of see where they expanded it. So basically where you had that little hand, that's more or less where it's at.
Okay. One of the things that I don't like a lot about this software is that they don't give you a nice satellite view. So if you don't know where things are exactly by the roads, it can be a little bit hard to pinpoint.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and there's a number of schools that are close to it.
Yeah, I see Cardiff Junior High right over there. And we have,
Oh, I never knew the name of that junior high school.
right over there, you have the country club, you have the airport, you have, of course, Bear Creek and Cy Lakes High School. So those are all like really important things that should maybe.
Yeah, there's some also other schools where the students in my subdivision go to, and they're actually in Katy ISD.
All right, so let's check that out.
There's Maid Creek.
So Rhodes Elementary is over here.
No, that's not it. It's Maid Creek.
Yeah, well, Maid Creek's down here, right?
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, Maid Creek High School, and there's an elementary school, and there's also they're all off, more or less all off Greenhouse Road.
Yeah.
And when I moved into the subdivision, all those schools were in Cy-Fair ISD. I don't know exactly what year that changed.
That's
Yeah,
interesting.
I'm not sure. Do you know kind of like the general bounds of, if you were going to draw a map, what you would be using?
I was going to draw a map. Oh, I'd probably go at least to, probably to my police station and library, which is almost to Highway 6.
Okay. So why don't we just go pretty broad here and try and get a big section in?
Yeah.
This is kind of a large swath. And I'll use I-10 at the bottom. Does
Okay.
this look good? Because we can just set that.
Yeah, that looks good.
Great. So you can see it pulled out all the census blocks that were in the area that we drew. Now, what would you name it, for example?
I have no idea. I'm not good when it comes to, imagination.
I'm sure you're fine.
So, Linda, what is the name of your subdivision?
Grand Oaks.
All right, let's use that even though we're using a pretty broad.
Grand Oaks area.
All right, yeah, that sounds good. And what would be something that you would use if you were identifying this to someone that lived in Fort Worth or Dallas?
I would say basically the Mud District, the library, Clay Road Library.
You mentioned your police station.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a Harris County. I don't know what it's Harris County, so I don't know what precinct number that is.
Yeah, that's fine. I wouldn't worry that much. For an example, right?
Yeah.
So this is pretty short, but it should cover just enough to get a general idea, which is what we're looking for here. So I'll
Yeah.
go ahead and finish it off. Let's put that we're part of Texans against Germany. So again, the tags feature isn't being very helpful here. I don't understand what's going on with that right now, but it's not letting us actually isolate anything. You could try a library. Doesn't seem to accept it very well. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to submit that. And just to show everybody, if we follow that link, it'll let us view the exact map we just drew. Okay, so it continues to give us Princeton initially, but it'll eventually move on to the area that you just drew. So now we can see the map that we put together, and this is how it would look to anybody who was looking at it outside of the map software.
Mm-hmm.
We can turn on like the state legislature lines again. So you can see that part of this over here, I know it's in like Gina Kalani's district, while parts of it are in a different one. And on the state senate, again, it's split right up along Barker Cypress. So not all of it is in the same area. You can kind of see that it's not being held together.
Yeah.
And that may be one of the things that would be pointed out about the community, right? That it's split.
Yep.
Exactly.
Currently. And this, to clarify, in describing your community, you would need to know some of these things about your community so that you can put them into your description. Can you go back and edit it, Matt, after you've done all of this and you discover something else that you wanted to write into the description of your community? Are you able to go back and edit?
I don't think so. From what I can, when I've practiced using this software to be able to give a good demonstration, I don't think that feature is currently available. I would be highly surprised.
It doesn't allow you to edit. It only allows you to delete.
Yeah, so I'm not very happy about that. I think they might change that before redistricting actually begins in earnest. But as of right now, once you have something, you're kind of stuck with it, which is why it's important to, while you have that option to change it available, that you make it totally matching all of your standards so that you don't have to worry about going back, right?
Can you delete it afterwards and start over once you submit?
Absolutely.
Can you delete?
So what we can do here is we spent a lot of time on it, but we can go ahead and we can just click delete and it will wipe that out.
Okay, so that's one way you could go back and add to your description, is to delete and then go back and do it over again, correct?
Absolutely. If you decide to redo it again, you should probably make sure that you get rid of the original version so that you don't have two copies of almost the same community that are floating around. That might contribute to confusion. So I'd be sure to use the delete option to clean up your work.
Okay. Okay, so now let's do one from Fort Bend. Stephanie, do you want to contribute the four corners or something? Is that what you call it?
Yeah, I was just trying to look. You caught me in the middle of eating my taco. Because I was going to have tacos one way or the other. I don't know.
Because when she gets up and moves, it looks like she's taking a walk in her yard.
That is my yard behind me, but it's a virtual.
Just had a question. When you delete, it deletes everything, the map and everything else you put in. So it's not as if it deletes some part of what you have saved. It deletes the entire package that you have saved, correct?
That's
Yeah,
correct.
delete the entire entry. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that is.
When you are drawing a map, there is that delete polygon feature that we're going to be able to see again in a second. But when you're still haven't totally submit the map, you have the option to edit the boundaries. But what's the zip code that we're going to work with?
Let's try. I don't know what I don't know what the zip code is for the Four Corners, but let's try the Quarters, which is the group I talked about behind the sugar factory, and that would be in 77498.
All right. So fly over them.
Hello. And that, do you see that little? Oops. Hold on.
It's a little slow.
There's an area.
So there it says Four Corners.
There's Four Corners.
Oh, there's Four Corners. Yeah. That's the area. Is Jennifer on this? Jennifer, do you hear me?
Yes, I do.
Four Corners. Four Corners is the area that we talked about. If you went from the crossroad of Claudine Road and Bissonnette to is that 6?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so go up from the dot. You can go up 6 to Bissonnette.
Okay.
Click.
Got it.
And then, yeah, to Claudine. And then back down to West Airport. Or, oh, I hear somebody. Maybe not that far down.
Okay. Why don't we go to airport?
Or maybe just, that maybe not, maybe doesn't go as far as Claudine. It might, I don't know.
Okay.
For the second, we can just kind of take it all into the original dot. What do I hear?
Joe, there's a problem with your mic.
My mic?
No, with Joe's mic. It's not.
Yeah, it's not working.
Your mic isn't working properly, Joe.
Yeah, you sound like a mouse.
But either way, we've isolated the Four Corners boundaries that we drew. So now it has the center.
I thought Jennifer was on this call too, doesn't she? Isn't she on this?
Yes, I am. I'm still here.
Jennifer, remember that you talked about going through the area when you were block walking for Eliz?
Mm-hmm.
I believe that's Four Corners you were talking about. That is in Precinct 3, I think. And I think it's the place where Lydia Ken was giving money to help with the roads or something that way.
I think Joe's saying he thinks it's 4.
Oh, you think it's 4?
Yeah, he's saying it's in precinct 4.
We're going to do sign language here.
You're really good, Jen.
Well,
Okay, Matt needs to know the name of this community. So are we calling it Four Corners?
Four Corners.
Right.
It's in Fort Bend County.
So what should we place down here?
I don't have all the facts and details of that area because I'm not as familiar with the specifics. I do know that it's a lower economic. In fact, if you go to that justice map that we were allowed to see, you'd see that it's lower income area, a lot of Hispanic, predominantly Hispanic area.
Joe is agreeing with you.
Joe, put stuff in the chat room. Maybe Joe can write something in the chat, and because he knows what I'm talking about. Yes, so really good. Predominantly Hispanic community with. It needed all kinds of. The only reason it has roads and sewerage and sewer and all that now is because of the other subdivisions that were built around it. What is he saying?
So I again, for just the example, right now, when we're trying to get through and show multiple areas, I don't think that we need to have like a paragraph, going.
Yeah.
But when you are creating these on your own, you should have an idea of what you're going to identify the community with before you even start drawing. Because what we're always trying to emphasize here is the ideas come before the map. So if you know what you're going to be looking for, that helps you draw the map in the first place. So it can be a little counterintuitive, but this looks good for what we're doing right now.
Yeah, I got you. It's just an area that's neglected. So I don't live in it. I don't live far from it, but it needs something that, like you were talking about advocating. I'd have to get some more details. I'm
sure. So down here, I'm just going to select again, Texans against gerrymandering.
Right.
I doubt it's going to give us, that's not very helpful, but
I can't see.
So we can add Hispanic, for example.
Uh-huh.
That would be a good starting tool. And let's just hit submit. So again, we have our new page, so we can go and we can create more, or we can look through existing ones. And if we click this link and we check it out, it's gonna take a sec, but it'll eventually fly us back all the way to Houston once it loads up the map.
That's interesting.
So it shrunk a little. I think that's because the census blocks that were in there was what it identified. But we can still check it out using the redistricting tools. So
Yeah,
this is interesting, which is that House District 28, even though it has absolutely nothing to do with Four Corners, is drawn deliberately to include it at the very edge. So that kind of splits the vote. And on the Texas State Senate map, look again, it cuts exactly through the same area into two separate Texas Senate districts to kind of split it apart.
Yeah.
I won't assume they had a bad intention when they were doing that, but I don't think they were being very conscientious of their needs. But you can see that for yourself right there. We can also look at the census blocks that are in there, but that's a little bit more technical. All right, so that's that example.
Okay, so takeaways from this. Does anybody want to offer one takeaway that they have about this process? Okay, I'll start. One takeaway is I need to know why I want to draw this community, right? And why I think it's important. So I have to identify that in my head before I start the drawing of it. All right. Anybody have another takeaway?
Well, my takeaway is you got to figure out what community of interests you're going to include.
Yes. You have to identify it and the reasons. Another takeaway?
Yeah, that was exactly what I was going to say. You need to determine what the common interest is.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And
And
why
you,
it's important, right? And if you notice, I don't remember exactly what it was called. Maybe Matt can help me remember. But it was like these community tags. Does that mean that you can link it to another community that, or identify another community that is similar to it?
I think that that's kind of open-ended. So I think they've included that so you might be able to search if you're looking for like similar demographic areas or like similar mud districts type stuff. I think that's open-ended. If somebody wanted to try and tag it towards another community, they'd be able to do so. But I'm honestly not sure what the intention behind that is.
Okay, okay, so that's something to be looking for. The other thing that I do know is that Fair Maps is actively sending suggestions to Princeton Gerrymandering Project about how to improve this little program, right? So if there's something that we saw tonight that we think should be included, like maybe those keywords down at the bottom, you know, something needs to be done with that because that's not working properly, right? Or other improvements that we could make to this little map for the specific purpose of this map. This map's purpose is not to create an overall district. This map's purpose is strictly for identifying your community of interest, all right? So to me, those tags, if they ever get them together or to be able to work, for example, this last map that we drew in Four Corners, it's high Hispanic and low income. So we should be able to use those two tags so that we can find out what other communities around there have the same characteristics. And therefore, that's the common interest, right? Between communities.
You know, Lydia,
Sorry?
I fooled around with that justice map. What is, I forget the name of it exactly. Anyway, and that you can go around and click on those kind of areas, and that will give you, on the top of that map, it has income, whether it's how many Hispanics live in that area and so forth. The combination of that with this would be able to give a really more definite description of the community.
Yeah, and that is one of the steps down the road, all right? That map is from Texas Civil Rights Project, and that's why it has that emphasis on it, okay? But remember, we start with a small unit, and then we gradually add on and add on and add on, right? Matt, did you have something you wanted to say?
can I say something?
Oh, AJ?
Yeah, I was just going to say, when we were looking at those maps, my initial thoughts was, my gosh, I really don't know these neighborhoods, even though I've lived here for 25 years or more. And I have run for office in KTISD and I've visited neighborhoods. But just like Stephanie mentioned, if you look at the census blocks, they have a program called Roam. And that individual census blocks can provide you significant amount of information about that specific block. And from that, you can start to think, well, what is my interest? If my interest is low income, okay, I can start to find out where it is. If my interest happens to be right now with the census, where is it that there are the so-called hard to count communities, meaning people either do not fill the census or nobody helped them where they are. So you can, if you start thinking of communities of interest, you have to narrow as to what it is. It can't be too generalized. Let me look to see where all the Asians live, because that really would not be as useful. So this mapping program, along with the census blocks, might allow you to really narrow down to what you want to think about, and then you can start thinking of geographical areas rather than conceptual areas.
So what I'm hearing is probably we need to become acquainted with the census block concept and what it does, right? And that's something that we can consider in a future talk like this one, right? So that, because from what I'm hearing is it will help you describe your community of interest if you know how that census block fits into it. Now, keep in mind though, that those census blocks were created for 2010. So the ones for 2020 are going to be different.
No, they have been updated. They
Yeah.
use the American Family Survey to provide the information. So not only are they being updated, but they are giving real time. As of right now, they're giving you real time information as to where they are on their census. And so if you really look at to neighborhoods that are not very far, if you take I-10 as a dividing line and you look at some neighborhood north of I-10, really low census completion. South of I-10, very high census completion. Now one can understand the demographics of that area, but if you really go down census block by census block, you can start to find out, well, first of all, you have to define what's your interest. What is your community of interest? And then you can start to look at some of the data. I found that to be useful at least.
Okay. Any other takeaway?
Yeah, I thought Matt did a marvelous job of describing and teaching. He should go into the teaching profession. He's very good, very clear,
Yeah.
Thank you.
very specific. I realized watching this that my community, the interest, my biggest thing and has been for a long time are all the communities in Fort Bend that are communities like the Four Corners that are kind of lost in all the other focus areas that we talk about. You know, I have a friend who lives in Needville, Old Needville. There are no sidewalks. There are no, there's only ditches. And when we had one of the rains, that all those people who were predominantly Hispanic and Black, very low income, all their houses flooded, not just during the hurricane, but during a big storm. And yet that's in Precinct 1. Do we realize all the different areas that we never, those of us who live in the main cities of Katy or Sugar Land or wherever, Fulshire, whatever it may be, we have no idea what those people don't have. It's just amazing to me that in the 2020, there are places like that still. So for me, it's really, I would love to be identifying by using those tags or whatever, identifying all those particular areas throughout the county. And are they being represented in the way that they should be if they still don't have sidewalks and sewers and all that kind of stuff? Basic. Anyway.
Infrastructure.
Leola?
I think maybe a good tag to have to describe what Stephanie's talking about would be infrastructure. Yeah.
Lack of infrastructure. Yes.
But if it has to be one word, and as it seems to require in the tags, infrastructure.
Yeah.
It would be helpful if the maps had a little more information, even if it was just county lines maybe on it. But because I was trying my hand at drawing a map today, and it would have been helpful to have that as kind of a guide whenever I was drawing the map.
The point is not
also
the point
city limits.
okay, but remember what the point is. The point is to describe your community of interest, right? Without regard
to the county
for the lines, right? To show eventually how those lines cut up your community of interest, right? So maybe that's the rationale behind not having those lines.
Could be, yeah, and which makes sense. That does make sense.
Yeah.
I was attempted to draw a map that included the boundaries of the Barker Reservoir watershed, and I drew one. Just, you know, as I said, while I was doing it, it would have been helpful, but I think I did a reasonable job anyway.
Yay, Leola. Okay, so show of hands, how many are going to try your hand at drawing a map? Come on. We didn't sit through this not to do anything with it, right? We got to do something with it. Tomorrow evening at 7, for the fireside chat, we're going to be dealing with District R. And District R mapping tool takes in a larger area. Matt, have you used that tool before?
I have seen it before. Personally, I have not built up like a tremendous amount of experience using it, but I think it's pretty good software.
Okay, so can we recruit you to learn it and give us another tutorial down the road?
Of course, I'd be happy to do that.
Yay, okay, all right. So tomorrow at 7 on the fireside chat, Stephanie is going to be giving a demonstration of what this particular tool can do. And we will follow it up with a tutorial like this one so that you can try your hand at it later. How does that sound? And in the meantime, we'll do some thinking about this, getting this information about describing communities and understanding the census tract and that kind of stuff. I need to process that a little bit and figure out where in the scheme of things this is all going to go. Okay.
I had a question. Some of us have never been on the fireside chat, or, you know, we're just kind of getting into this. Can you explain what that is?
The fireside chat is a weekly, on Wednesday evenings at 7 o'clock, Zoom meeting of people who are interested in redistricting.
Okay.
Francesca, if you would, in the chat box, put in your email address for me.
Sure.
I'll send you the link. Are you on Facebook?
Yeah.
Okay, so go to Fair Maps, Texas.
Okay.
And Stephanie Swanson just posted an announcement today, or an event today, around the fireside chat for tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
And the link is there for you to sign up and register. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but this afternoon, I was having a hard time with Facebook. It wouldn't let me do a whole bunch of stuff. Apparently, I looked it up, and they're having problems across the state.
Maybe they're fixing it so it doesn't have all those horrible conservative ads. When I get them on my timeline,
okay, so
I mark them as spam.
All right, so let's give a big round of applause to Mr. Matt.
Yes.
Thank you, Matt. And we will see you all hopefully tomorrow evening.
Some of us might have something going on, but I'm going to check because I'm interested. Okay.
We'll see you tomorrow evening at the chat, those of you who can attend, and I'll be in touch regarding a follow-up to this.